a member who's been with us for a while. He got a charge, and he just said something real nice. Like, oh, you're running a great thing, doing it here. And my instant response to him was, we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for you guys. So all of you guys coming here and being a part of this is what allows it to happen. That's actually the most fulfilling thing. And really, I wanted to keep it pretty simple, usually pretty political, and I'm also pretty argumentative about current flow of modern ideology. And I think that institutions in general are working against people, not for them. To kind of knock that out of the way, I think one of the more important things, particularly for some of you young guys over here, we talk about the college institution a lot. I am a young business owner, and I was in this position because I had about a decade's worth of work experience prior to doing all the work. So people need to consider that if you're going to be spending 30 years of your life in school, then that has to be already a worth it endeavor. And is that good for your environment? Like, is that going to give you positive results? Unfortunately, people who, you see, like my grandparents who went to college, graduated from Yale and other stuff like that, they got set up for life. They met their wives there. Nowadays, all you're doing is being encouraged to join the degeneracy, the hookup culture, pick up bad habits like drug use on weekends so that you can complete your homework assignments, and you become a professional test taker. You don't become a professional worker. So I encourage people in general to do the things that you love to do and develop your skill set, because that is what's going to actually give you work, right? At the end of the day, as a business owner, I'm not looking for somebody who has a piece of paper that I need to teach them what to do, okay? I'm looking for somebody who comes in here and says, not only can I do this job, but I can overfulfill. I can go beyond what you're even looking for. And I think all of you guys can at least accept that as an idea. So considering we have some young guys in the room today, just continue to develop yourself. That's the most important thing. And don't be so certain that these institutions have your best interests. So to see everybody here today is certainly refreshing to me. Now that I'm kind of done with the political stuff and just want to jump into the commandments, the values. Everything about this facility, how we came together, it is entirely faith-based. From my own personal story, I partnered with Ken Artunian, who some of you guys know, maybe some of you guys don't, but he's the guy who opened the first ISU gym, and he's an Armenian man. He has a very similar relationship with religion that I do. And at the end of the day, you got a Jew and an Armenian who partnered together in order to make something work. And we both believe in God, right? And as a Christian, he might say, Christ. And as a Jew, I say Yahweh. But at the end of the day, we follow the same commandments. And this is really the topic that I want to discuss today, which is, what is it that the Bible brings to the table? It brings a tactical way in order to live your life. And I was going to read a couple of the commandments like in the 5 books. I know I've mentioned it many times that the 5 books of Moses is what contains all of the commandments. And you see, if you were to go through the book, you would realize that somebody like Moses, for example, he followed God's commandments, not going to the right or to the left of it, and that's why he was blessed. You see that Moses, he followed God's commandments. He even wrote them, right? But he didn't stray to the right or to the left of the commandment. He does it exactly as God commanded. And the one time that he didn't do exactly as God commanded, he experienced the judgment of that. And he wasn't allowed to go into the land of Israel or Canaan, right? And so I was just going to show you that, like, I can open this book just about anywhere. I was looking for like a point to derive out of all this. And I just opened up somewhere in Exodus, and I was like, oh yeah, there's all these laws. Like, how do I live? And so here's just a couple interesting ones. I believe this is Mishpatim is how it is in Hebrew, but in Exodus, it'll be 21:12. Like, one who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But for one who had not lain in ambush and God had caused it to come to his hand, I shall provide for him a place so to which he shall flee. So people who kill others, they shall be killed. Murderers are not supposed to be allowed out. And if it were an accidental death, God provides a place for that person to flee. One who strikes his father and mother shall be put to death. One who kidnaps a man and sells him, and he was found to have been in his power, shall surely be put to death. So when people like to say that, like, oh, slavery is like okay in the Bible, it's definitely not. When you kidnap somebody against their will and you sell them, that person's supposed to be put to death. So there is just a way of talking in the Bible that it comes from 3,500 years ago. So it's pretty old. There were a lot of practices that were not good, and these were the rules that were implemented in order to have people change from those things. And in America, we completely changed and even branched off from the Catholic Church in order to be more Protestant and start a new religious freedom that was very much by the book. I think I've mentioned it last week that first set of civil law that was established in the U.S. actually established the Sabbath, resting on the seventh day, as law. So they followed the 5 books, just like the Jews are supposed to follow the 5 books. And that's how this country came into being. One who curses his father and mother shall surely be put to death. If men quarrel and one strikes his fellow with a stone or with a fist, and he does not die but falls into bed, if he gets up and goes outside and under his own power, the one who struck him is absolved. Only for his lost time shall he pay, and he shall be provided for healing. So again, this is another scenario that exists in the world, and it was just simplified on what to do if somebody were to happen. If 2 men were to strike each other and get in an altercation, and he doesn't die, then you pay for his healing and his lost time. Okay, this is justice. This is how people need to be living their lives, and they have absolutely no clue on how to do that. They're referencing the modern law book. Okay, law keeps getting thicker and thicker and thicker. There's been thousands of laws added. And you see, I ended up in this position personally because I pushed back against the religious institution. As a Jew, I grew up in the Jewish organizations. As a Christian, you'll grow up in the Christian organizations. But if you were to say from a simple position, they say that there's 613 commandments. There are not 613. There's 10 commandments, and then there's variations of how that plays out. So to get an idea of just how bad it's become now, and I think this parallels even in the Christian world as well, it was told to Israel a couple days ago by a yeshiva student who follows the Gemara and the Talmud, which are man-made works. He compiled how many commandments there existed in the Gemara. What he said they counted was 5,000. There's 5,000 commandments. The point of today is to show you that you could open up anywhere and find something that is instantly applicable to modern day and how to live. For example, if men fight and they collide with a pregnant woman and she miscarries, but there will be no fatality, he shall surely be punished, as the husband of the woman will be caused to be assessed towards him, and he shall pay it in order of the judges. But if there shall be fatality, then you shall award a life for a life, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a wound for a wound, a bruise for a bruise. This phase, by the way, people like to really go in loopholes with it. Mozzie the other day called me about it. My personal feelings on this, which is not the typical translation, is that the only way you stop people from taking out eyes is you take out their eyes too, okay? I promise you, as somebody who fights in the gym, somebody punches you, you punch them back, okay? So a bruise for a bruise, that's just how you got to do it. And this is justice. It's not coming from me. I'm reading it from a foundation that is not only brought to this country, but is thousands of years old and has caused the most flourishing societies in the world. And if you were ever curious as to what it looks like for people who don't have that literature and don't have that sort of foundation, it just looked like the Mayan and Incan culture, which was in the U.S. that could barely function and had human sacrifice as one of their daily tasks. Okay, so I think that kind of makes the point, which is, guys, if you're interested in learning the commandments, I chose somewhat arbitrary. I just opened up, and this is where it was. But you know what? I could like flip somewhere else. This one's interesting because I think Jews are often and unfortunately so guilty and labeled as being the people who started all usury, interest. I would just like to read how they're supposed to be following it, how I follow it, and how I would recommend others do, which is right here in Exodus chapter 22-24. When you lend money to my people, to the poor person who is with you, do not act towards him as a creditor. Do not lay interest upon him. If you take your fellow's garment as security, until sunset shall you return it to him. For it alone is his clothing. It is his garment for his skin. In what should he lie down? So it will be that if he cries out to me, I shall listen, for I am compassionate. And again, that it talks in such a way, but what it's saying is to take a credit for a loan, saying, okay, I'll give you the money, you give me your shirt, you'll come pick it up in the morning. For certain people, that's all they have. So you don't take his shirt from him, and you for sure give it back to him, even if he doesn't have the money to give it back. Okay? This is the way to live. This is what kindness is what compassion is. And we're not referencing ourselves, we're referencing God. And we have trust that this is God because he's already proven to us that this works. He's already shown us through the miracle of life that this is real. I'm going to go ahead and just end it there, and I'll pass it off to my father, and then everybody will say their part. Again, if you guys have any questions, we have a little speaker up here. Nobody will be on camera unless you want to be, in which case you can come sit up here. But alternatively, raise your hand to ask a question, and feel free to make a statement whenever you feel like.
Oh, beautiful. Just an historical footnote, just to flesh out what you were talking about. William Bradford was the leader of the Puritans that came to America on the Mayflower, if you will, and he was the governor of the new community, and he wrote extensively. So you can look it up. And he says, he was a Christian, referring to the Old Testament. He says, I'll paraphrase, we find that the laws contained within the 5 books of Moses are sufficient unto themselves for the foundation of a nation. So that's an American Christian talking. That's the kind of Christianity that created the New World, if you will. So just to follow up with something, last week I was making an allusion to the fact that when the Jews are pursued by Pharaoh after they've been driven out of Egypt and before the splitting of the Red Sea, and the Egyptian army is approaching, the Jews are basically saying, hey, Moses, what's the story here? Were there no graves in Egypt, that we had to come out here in the desert to die? It would be better that we served Pharaoh than to die in the wilderness. Of course, Moses says, basically, shut up, you got it all wrong. And the summary position, you can read it in the text, it's, again, I'll paraphrase, basically, stand fast and see the salvation of God, and God will make war for you. Later on in the text, after the splitting of the Red Sea and the Egyptian army is swallowed, another tribe called the Amalekites attack the Jews as they're on their way. After the miracles of the splitting of the Red Sea, they're on the way to Mount Sinai, and they're attacked by the Amalekites. And the Jews, with sword in hand, leave the clouds of glory, which are protecting them, to defend the stragglers at the back, and they make war. So there's a time for another text in the Torah that's relevant. Vehamusim alu bnei Israel me'aretz Mitzrayim. When the Jews left Egypt, they were armed. So there's a time where you listen to God and have faith in him, and there's a time, but you're always prepared to act. So they were armed, they had weapons, they went out and dealt with the Amalekites. And later on, I think we know what happens. I'm just going to read a verse here. When Moses descends from the mountain with the tablets in hand before the sin of the golden calf, he said, the tablets where the 10 Commandments were inscribed. This is Exodus 32, verse 16. The tablets were God's handiwork, and the script was the script of God engraved on the tablets. And the word in Hebrew for engraved is harut, and harut, and the word for freedom is herut. And in Hebrew, it's the exact same letters. In other words, you would read it, any Hebrew speaker would see both words and just decide which context. But if you can read it either way, and the question is, this is deliberate ambiguity for our benefit. The tablets were God's handiwork, and the script was the script of God, comma, engraved on the tablets. How about we read it this way? The tablets were God's handiwork, and the script was the script of God, freedom, on the tablets. So the only true freedom we're going to know is what's in the 10 Commandments. In the 10 Commandments, there's a Jewish tradition that the narrative of the 5 books of Moses is not, that is not an element of the 5 books. It's actually, the 10 Commandments are the source of the 5 books. An interesting idea, meaning the heart of the matter is in the 10 Commandments, and people are not inclined to follow them unless they're extremely conscious. Ask yourself the question, would it be better to die in the wilderness or to be a slave? The 5 books of Moses telling us through the narrative, well, it should be an obvious answer. It would be better to die in the wilderness than to be a slave, because you're serving the elements that are contrary to the essence and the goodness of life. So interestingly enough, after the 10 Commandments are given and all the Jews hear them, they shortly afterwards, Moses is at the top of the mountain, and the Jews do the golden calf, and that's a great sin. And there's the point is that even if you hear the voice of God, it's not a guarantee that you say, okay, I got it, God. There's something inside us that is going to say, yeah, but that was then, this is now. I don't really have to do that. And that's not to say that we can't do the right thing. Clearly, Moses did the right things, and a lot of Jews did the right things. It's that we're inclined not to, even when we hear it from God himself, unless we're going to exercise some personal discipline over this matter. And that's the free will aspect. We're not automatons for good. He created the universe and existence itself so that humans can play out the drama, a free will drama of choosing between good and evil. Later on in the Torah, after they've been in the desert for many years, and they send spies to report on the land, and 12 spies are sent, and 10 of them give a negative report of the land and say, we could never overtake it, there are giants there, et cetera, et cetera. But 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, according to the narrative, are saying, no, we can do this. This is nothing new. We've been across this road many times, and God is with us. We can prevail. Well, of course, 10 of them wreak havoc politically by saying, no way, we can't cut it. So this story is repeated over and over and over again in the Torah. But returning to the original point of harut, which means engraved, and herut, which means freedom, we're supposed to understand that they both could apply at any given moment. They might even be, one doesn't nullify the other. They can be words inscribed on the tablets, and it can be freedom on the tablets. 2 things can be true at once. So keep that in mind. God is with us. We got to hang tough. We got to be tough. This is not for sissies. Life is not for sissies. And there's moral choices to be made. But as Moses says to the Jews when they're in doubt, he says, stand fast and see the salvation of God. But you got to stand with God. And sometimes I'll do things for you, like I'll split the sea and I'll take care of the Egyptians. Sometimes you're going to have to go out with a sword in hand and deal with the bad guys and be ready for both. And they're both kosher, to coin a phrase. All right. That's all I want to say today. All right.
Great.
Okay. Cool. Sure.
Mr. Moses, what does stand fast mean?
Hang in there, basically, right? Stay the course. another term phrase. Does that make sense? Okay, cool.
I've noticed that all people seem to want to be part of some sort of elite class, like that's where they get these ideas of cults and secret societies where people think that they have access to some higher truth than other people. They know something that other people don't know. And when they enter into that higher class, they then hold themselves above people and say, no one will ever be like me because I know the truth and I have access to things that no one else has access to. But it struck me that if we were to make it simple, it's really just four things that people need: God, religion, family, and community. And the truth is that that's something that's accessible to everyone. You don't have to be part of some secret class or some special society to know that there is a God, there is a creator, and there is a God who's greater than other gods. And then to have access to his revelation, which, as we've been discussing, has been widely disseminated and dispersed across the earth. And there is no shortage of access to the Word of God that we actually can discover. Now, family, well, that's a matter of biology, and this is something that strikes me because, I come from the Orthodox Jewish community, and in the Orthodox community, they'll say, well, look at us, we have lots of kids, so we're better than everyone. And it's like, well, last I checked, anyone can do that, right? All it takes is a man and a woman and no birth control, right? And so, great. I think that's wonderful. And I think that all people should take advantage of the fact that we as human beings have a superpower that we can literally generate life and create new human beings that are the product of our own DNA and our own character. And if raccoons are going to do that and rabbits are going to do that, then we should be definitely doing that as well. And to be able to create human beings in the image of God would be absolutely an unbelievable accomplishment. Now, the Hebrew word for children is banim, and banim comes from the same word of boneh, which means to build. And that's because the primary building blocks of our life is the children that we have. What we build in this life is best exemplified in the human beings that we build with our own input and our own union between a man and a woman, and then what we do with those children to raise them in this life. And so, again, you don't need to be part of any privileged class to achieve that. What's funny is I think they say that the birth rate is higher in the poorer communities than in the richer communities, right? So the richer people that have more assets and can better support children, they choose to have less kids, versus poorer people are having more kids, which is admirable. And I think it's actually very cowardly that people with more resources and more wealth choose to do less for humanity and have less children and take on less responsibility. So, this is definitely something that we need to work on. And the fourth pillar being community. Again, what is a community? Is a community a predetermined group of people that all have sheep-like beliefs that if you deviate from the norm or you speak your mind, you're then ostracized and no one wants to talk to you? That's not really a community. That just sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like you can't be yourself. It sounds like you can't actually speak your mind and get and be accepted, right? And so these communities that exist, and it goes into the topic of institutions as well, where they're telling you, we're here to help you, we're here to build you up, we're here to make you successful. Yet at the same time, you need to bend the knee to us and do exactly what we tell you and destroy your own humanity for the sake of our agendas, and that's extremely harmful. So again, if people want to develop communities, you don't have to go submit to a pre-existing community. You can actually venture on a path of finding like-minded individuals who are people that you actually connect to on a real soul level. And there's not just some orthodoxy or some, authority that you need to bow down to, but you can actually become a leader yourself. You can actually have compatriots and colleagues that are equals to you, and that you can all together build a community and build an environment where life can flourish and families can develop. And again, like they have this idea of, oh, if you don't send your kids to school, how will they have friends? Right? It's like, well, look, if everyone wasn't in school all day, then we'd all be in the world and we'd have to meet each other on real terms. The same thing with men and women. Oh, like how are men and women going to meet each other if they're not being, like, again, I could speak from the Jewish point of view where they have matchmakers making these matches, right? It's like, well, men and women should really just be meeting on their own terms as individuals, as human beings. And so I think the power of the individual when informed by God is limitless. And we have all of that accessible to us. We have all those opportunities. We have all the information. And it's up to us to make our own way with the people in our lives and not just wait for other people to do it for us and try to submit to authorities that are not God. The only authority that we're accountable to is God. The only law that we have to follow is God's law. And that's something that could actually create powerful people who have families, who have communities, and who have connection to God and his law. And that's the true religion. That's the true community. And really, that is the community of humanity. Because at the end of the day, we all have access to this. This is the lifeblood that runs through all of our veins. It's the oxygen that we all breathe. We're all one in that sense. And so we should definitely hold on to the common ground, which is there's much common ground. And that way we can come together over the good things instead of fighting over all the bad things.
Amen. Great. Today, there was something that Mr. Moses brought up earlier that I wanted to speak about the story of the 12 spies who entered Canaan and came back with their reports. I personally manage a programming and results gym, so we help individuals reach the goal that they've been struggling to get to. So I'm actually the guy who meets with every single client who goes through a program at the end of the program to see if they hit their goals and what issues they had, what they could have done better, and whether or not they want to pursue a new goal. So for the most part, people are pretty good and they hit their goals and they do it again and they kind of rinse and repeat. But for those who don't necessarily hit their goals and they're having a lot of struggles, it tends to turn into a conversation of their life story and all the external struggles outside of the gym that's affecting their fitness journey. So we end up talking about that subject consistently and over. And as I'm like meeting more and more people, I start to realize that if I were to boil it down to one primary struggle, it tends to be in their doubt in something actually turning out good for them if they have the equation that we give them, right? I guess to rephrase that, we're given a template to follow and actual commands to follow in order for us to have a guaranteed result in the end. And that's something that's repeated, or that's literally in the 5 books of Moses. And the same thing goes into fitness, right? We have your equation. We can tell you what to do and you will definitely get to where you want to be as long as you follow these steps. And where people have their issues is in their doubt in that equation. And something I connected that to was the story of the spies, where Moses sends out one person from each tribe to go spy out the land of Canaan, and they come back and they give their reports, and it was only 2 of them against the other 10 who were saying that this land is good. And they had complete faith in God and his plan, which he laid out perfectly for them, which is like, you are going to inherit this land. Everything's going to go good for you, and I will be by your side. I will fight for you. So they should have no doubt in their mind that they are going to win, and with like 0 casualties. And it was the 10 other people who were the majority, by the way, and we can relate to this just on an internal level as individuals, that were almost overruling God's promise. And I started thinking about this myself because, of course, I have certain doubts as well, and I'm sure a lot of other people have those same doubts internally. on whether or not, if I actually like follow through with this, if in the face of evil and darkness, I'm presented with a decision on whether or not to keep true to a good path or to deviate and follow my own will, which for some reason we tend to think that that's the right solution. It tempts us in the wrong direction. And it just gave me a lot more clarity on keeping consistent and following the commands that's laid out by God, not by another human. So I guess a question to ruminate on for all of us is, let us identify what those doubts or where those doubts emanate, and clarify ourselves why we're doubting in that specific moment, and how can we overcome it in a good way, not in your own way. That's all I have.
Definitely a lot came to mind. I would like to give this opportunity if anybody has any questions or anything that's on their mind that you'd like us to cover. If not, that's perfectly fine too. That's fine. I kind of wanted to finish off with just a bit of a side point, because I think we all kind of somehow talked about the same thing indirectly without really planning it, which is that the way of living comes from the commandments. And the commandments, again, have you say, don't stray to the right or the left of God. Don't believe in other things. Trust in God. So that's to his point, where we talked about both America and American and Jewish history and where all these things come from. The commonality is the commandments, right? He talked about community and God and children. The commandments tell you, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. That's the first commandment that's asked from God to mankind. The first thing that actually God tells Adam to do, who would have been the first man who was created. Community without the commandments, the way of following, it's just not worth being a part of. And it definitely had me, even the laws that I discussed earlier, right? Like how to treat the destitute, right? And I know that this is a program that helps a lot of people, right? And what the hell do I know about? I mean, I've been finding out more about it, but ultimately, what do I know about helping the homeless, giving them housing, Section 8, 501c3, this, that, and the other, right? But I do know that this is how you help people, right? And I'm not adding and I'm not subtracting from it. And from my own life, it has resulted in this. I hope that is encouraging for other people. They speak about this as well. And each one of you have that same opportunity, which is if you follow the commandments, you can be blessed. And we're just trying to hand off to you the source material so you don't have to believe in us. You can just read it yourself. We said it like 1,000 times. We probably say it at least another 1,000 more. Just like any other skill set, it's all there in the 5 books of Moses. And I just want to encourage people to believe in themselves as well. And to even if you don't believe it, that you are a walking blessing. Every one of you in this room, you're a walking blessing. And if you believe that about yourself, even when you don't, you continue to say that in the mirror or when you're alone in your head, you actually will be that. Okay, so thank you so much all for being here, and I wish you have a blessed week.